Well, from Saddleback Emeritus Institute today, we have an instructor who's been with us before, William Reinhardt, and political science, current issues, and government. Lots to talk about in your classes. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Good
nice
to have you here. I know we've talked before, and when you're teaching some of these classes, do you since you are teaching mainly the current issue? Do you often relate it to maybe things from a decade ago, a century ago?
Constantly.
Yeah.
Constantly, but although there's just so much to cover that you can't really, in a short little 16-week class, for example, you can't cover everything in the depth that I would like to. And I've never seen anything like the current environment that we have now. Mm-hmm. And so it's really hard to cover them adequately. We have 50 to 100 people in a class, and they all come from different backgrounds and different opinions and different persuasions, and it's hard to try to give something common that everybody will relate to, because they can't, so you have to do the best you can.
When you look for subjects to talk about, how do you approach them? Do you approach it where, because nowadays, even compared to maybe 20 years ago, things are so contentious. The whole point, I would think that to your class is, let's all discuss this. Let's look at this at different points of views. What's real, what may not be. How do you maybe prevent things getting too contentious in your class?
Well, that's a good question. One of the things that happens is that we all have belief systems. And we've all been indoctrinated all our lives to what our belief system should be by our parents.
You make a good point.
By our religion, by our company. Mm-hmm. And so by the time we get to be 20 years old, we believe things, but we don't even know why we believe them in some cases. And so when you throw people in that are in their 80s, I have someone in a class that's 93 years old. It's fabulous. Right. And they have survived this far, and they have their belief system. They have what they think is the right way to do it. And so they may not have had all the information that they needed. And there's a couple of psychological terms that come up. Cognitive bias is one in particular, where we tend to, if we hear something we don't believe in, we don't follow, we don't like, we tend to shut it off and make believe it's not there. So we don't really do any creative thinking or critical thinking to say, gee, is that the right way to proceed in the future? And that's the biggest obstacle I have, is that everyone has set in their own ways. And so I spend a lot of time, probably more than any of the other people, going over how we got that way, why we believe what we believe. And I spend the first 4 weeks in the class actually going over that particular part of the subject before I even talk about anything. Yeah. And I know even that's impossible to do in 4 weeks, but it still gets people thinking. We're not really taught to do critical thinking.
You're right.
And we don't have all the facts to make a decision on. And everyone on the people that are in the persuasion business know that. So they can get us manipulated one way or another very, very easily. Right. And so I just try to do the best I can in this short period of time we have, and cover probably the more important statistics, the more important current issues that I can see, and we go from there. And I get a lot of, I really look for their input too, but I give them more things upon which to relate to. Yeah,
and I think you brought up a very good point about people believing a certain way. And I think what's hard as we get older is that all of a sudden you start hearing the opposite. And on one hand, you may or may not believe it, but what does come out is people feel like, what, you've been calling me a liar, or I've been told the wrong thing all my life, and it becomes very offensive.
And you don't want to acknowledge that. You just turn it off, and the result is, I joke with everyone, I say, as soon as I say anything, I have any opinion to the class, half the people don't agree with me. Right. And then I say another opinion, another half don't agree with me. So I try to make it clear that I'm not advocating any one group. We fall into this trap of thinking there's only two ways, like for example in government, Republican or Democrat. Right. And there's more to it than that. And so I tell them I'm not biased one way or the other. I'll call it the way I see it and why I see it, and then you can make your decision. And people still don't relate to that. They don't want to give up their long cherished belief that they have.
Right, right. How long have you been teaching political science?
Actually, it's Saddleback till 2 years.
Okay. And prior to that, did you teach history or
No,
or government or?
I'm more like a organic intellectual, you might say.
Okay.
I have 4 degrees. I graduated from Merchant Marine Academy at Kings Point. One of the highlights of my life is when I was 17 years old. I'm probably the youngest graduate of Kings Point that they have had. I went at 16, never graduated from high school. And at 17, I went around the world on the on the President Polk, 108 days.
Wow.
And what an experience for a 17-year-old
Yeah.
to be on a ship, basically on my own as a cadet officer on the ship.
Wow.
And going to 50 some odd countries.
Wow, that's amazing.
I was on, and then I went on the second, one of the things about Kings Point is the whole second year you go out to sea on merchant ships. And there's only 2 or 3 cadets on there. You're treated like an officer. You go ashore. I was on the Constitution, the second ship I went on that goes to the Mediterranean just before Grace Kelly went over and got married. That's the ship she went on. And then I went to Northern Europe on the American Producer. I could speak French. I got all over Europe. And it was an experience for me to see how the rest of the world lives and compare it to what we have here. And that's really been the basis for my whole life.
Yeah,
And
interesting, yeah.
then I got into management. I got a master's degree from Claremont with Peter Drucker, the guy that invented the discipline of management in America, in the world actually. And then I got a second master's degree in human and organizational systems from Fielding Graduate University in Santa Barbara, and a PhD. And the PhD is what really made a difference in my life by not accepting, by challenging everything I hear. And for the first time, I had the ability and the opportunity to really look and research and look into what I believed and what I didn't believe in.
Yeah.
And I'm currently writing a book, Brainwashed: The Manipulation of the American Mind. And I've really gotten into how it's so easy for people that are in power to manipulate the masses and people to go whichever way they want.
Right.
And we're seeing that very much so in the world, and we're also seeing it in America.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. When is your class?
Current issues in government.
No, when is it? When is it?
Friday mornings, 8:30 in the morning.
And of course, we're almost coming up to the spring soon.
9 o'clock.
It'll be continuing in the spring as well.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. It seems like a fascinating class.
I compliment we have 50 to 100 people in the class. The seniors, I have one person, 93, like I mentioned. I compliment them to be that active with all the other pressures on seniors that they show up and still want to lifetime learn something new and progress in where they are.
Right.
And that's what they do. It's a fabulous group of people.
Yeah, very good. Well, and good to see you.
Good to see you.
Take care. And folks, you can go online to saddleback.edu/emeritus. And I think spring signups come pretty soon.
They're on now.
If I'm not mistaken. Right now?
Right now.
Okay, so take advantage of that. And William's a great guy. He's been on before. Take his class if you can. It sounds fascinating. We'll be right back.